Hey friends, we're going to talk about the crazy mayoral election that's taking place in New York City, where for the first time in American history, not that we would elect a Marxist, because there's been a lot of covert Marxists that I'm sure have been elected into office in America. We've got the notables of like Senator Warren and Bernie Sanders and AOC, but this guy is an open radical. He's not hiding any of his views. He's very open about it. And we're going to talk about what's leading to the discontentment that would cause this guy to be a front runner. What are some of the unique variables that are happening in America today that have even created a platform for somebody this radical to get into office in terms of the leading, the gateway to America, New York City. So we're going to talk about that and a whole lot more on our podcast today. I think you're going to enjoy it.
Hey, welcome to the Ron Johnson Discipleship Podcast.
We are so excited to be with you today. Lots of great things going on in our culture. And as always, we want to make a good attempt to bring the Lordship of Jesus Christ and biblical worldview to help us understand what's happening. Now, to me, one of the most concerning developments, shocking developments that this would be happening in the Big Apple, America's, a gateway, is New York City, is what's happening in the mayoral race there. And what looks like the very first time in American history we would have an outspoken Marxist, socialist, whatever label you want to put on him. Some have called him terrorist. That actually stands a good shot of getting in there, which is unbelievable. This is happening.
He's favored to win, highly favored to win.
So this is interesting. A lot of times, this was actually by a gal by the name of Olivia Perro. She's a journalism fellow with the Daily Signal. And she's talking about how Victor Hansen was interviewed by Mark Levin, and he highlighted three factors that were contributing to this, what I would call election anomaly, because again, this would be unheard of. This would be a first. Why this guy could actually get in. Number one, this is an off-year, low turnout election. And we've seen this before. Sometimes when it's not the big headlines of elections or national elections, people just don't show up. And those are dangerous times, because when you don't show up, it means somebody else that's highly energized by this, dangerous candidate is going to show up, and it doesn't take a lot of votes to get in. And so this is a low turnout election in New York. Secondly, I didn't realize this, the demography of New York has changed when people fled New York after COVID. And so there's literally between 1 million or 1.5 million less conservative, not necessarily conservative voters, but less conservative voters who are going to be voting. So that was interesting. We saw a lot of the heavy-handed talk about authoritarianism. That the COVID was a picture of Democrat authoritarianism. True no kings protest going on by us over that, because that's what we saw. So a lot of people just said, we're out of here. And that's what a lot of folks don't understand, is if you're going to tax successful people or you're going to shut down their lives, they're just going to leave. Only in this situation is working for the bad, because now we have less people to resist this guy. So that's concerning. And then thirdly, and you and I talked about this, this guy has an Obama-like a charisma to him. When he talks, when he communicates, when he's in debates. In this article, they said he's like Elizabeth Warren minus the screaming.
Minus the Karen.
Yeah.
Take the Karen out, yeah.
So low voter turnout, less conservative voters, and charisma could translate into an incredible upset win here that would put into office undoubtedly the most leftist, radical, Marxist candidate that we've ever had in American history, governing over a big city like New York, which is crazy. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I didn't want to spend too much time on him, but I watched a short interview.
Yeah.
And the content, what he talked about, was interesting because basically, who's going to pay for it? The billionaire is going to pay for it. Who's going to pay for it? The business are going to pay for it, which is always easier said than done. But
and let's just pause right there,
yeah.
Because that's what the left always says. Pay your fair share. We talked about this before. From a biblical perspective, it is absolutely immoral. Let's just say you make $1 million and I make $1,000. It is absolutely immoral for you to have to pay a higher percentage rate in taxes than I do just because you're more successful in terms of the amount of money that you make. That is immoral. In other words, you're going to pay more taxes because you make more money. That's okay. But it should be a flat rate. In other words, to tax one citizen at a higher rate than another citizen just because they make more money is effectively having government stealing from you and redistributing it under a guise of economic equality or whatever. But it's immoral from a biblical standpoint. So, number one, it's immoral. Number two, if I tell you you're going to pay the bill for all these people who don't make as much money as you, you're not going to stay in New York. You're going to leave.
Right.
And so their funding mechanism would have to be moronic to stay in a city or to stay in a state that is targeting you and in a sense punishing you for being successful at whatever it is that you do. Now, they're not going to stay there. So we hear this all the time. Who's going to put the bill for this program? The rich. I just want to say that is a massive assumption that is erroneous from the start.
Yeah, and again, people talk about the billionaires and whatnot. Well, I'll tell you, the billionaires have their tax set up in the way that they are really insulated from a bunch of these things. And guess what? The billionaires have infrastructure to leave your state or leave your city.
Yes.
So it's really not the billionaires who's going to pay for it. It's the people who are like a high income earners. But again, these people have high school bills because they train themselves for years. They study really hard. So it's just not what people think it looks like. It's not as simple as it is. And you said, like, if I'm not incentivized to work harder, if I have to work twice as hard as the next person to make this amount of money, to have higher income, to add greater value, and I'm punished for it, I'm going to go to a place that's going to reward me for it. Hence the exodus from California, New York, England, etc.
So, absolutely. Yeah. And so this is where, this is the bane of socialism. Yeah, I think Margaret Thatcher said, socialism works great until, you steal all the money from the rich and then there's basically no more money.
Run out of
left.
other people's money.
Yeah, you run out of other people's money. So what happens is it just increases the misery level for more people. And the folks at the top of the pile, that's also the joke of communism is not that you get rid of the billionaires, because somebody in every economic system, somebody is running it, somebody's in charge of it, somebody's overseeing it, somebody's managing it, and those are the people who get all the perks. And so all you've done is make everybody's life miserable, and you still have a higher class that enjoys all the benefits of the ruling class. There's always going to be a ruling class. I don't care what society that you're in. Somebody has to lead it.
Right.
And so these are all those half lies that get promoted by a charismatic leader that make them so dangerous to a low information, society.
Soundbite society.
Who's just basically upset. Yeah. And, we talked about this. There is reason that the younger generation is upset. One of those reasons is it's really hard to buy a home. Talk about that a little bit. I mean, Marxism promotes itself. It seizes the advantage of public discontent, right?
Yeah.
It goes to the folks that are most unhappy, and it stirs them all up and promises them a better future. But talk about some of those things that are legitimately stirring up the younger generation.
I talk to a lot of young people, and again, highly educated, have good jobs, cannot buy a house. Combination of higher interest rate, which we're trying to work on that right now.
Yep.
Higher home prices.
Yep.
Okay.
Inflation,
higher home prices. But also high student loans, okay? Just general inflation and the price of just cost of living going up. And what it does is it causes a discontent among young people. And I think research has shown that home ownership leads to stability in a nation. When you own a home, you're not just renting. It causes you to feel settled. This is your community. You tend to vote. You tend to care more about politics. You tend to care about more school board. You tend to care about who's the principal of your school because this is your because you own this land, right?
And
you tend to have more kids too.
On top of that, I was going to say children as well, because the biggest conversion factor for moving from what we would call a libtard to a conservative is when you have kids.
Yeah.
Because you realize, okay, all these things that I used to think were important or that I promoted are not really going to help at all in terms of the future generation. Do I want my kids believing all this stuff and acting these ways? No, I don't. So home ownership and family and then children. Now, this is interesting, in our situation, and I was having this conversation with a black couple who are members of our church just last week. I said, the reason that some communities struggle is because of the breakdown of the family. Like, okay, how do my kids get a down payment on their house? Well, you can do that in two ways. In our situation, I couldn't write them a big check, but I said, hey, why don't you come and stay with us? And we have a basement apartment. And we let them save their money for a down payment, so they just bought a nice starter home. If my wife and I are not together, we've been divorced or separated, I might not be able to do that because now our resources just got divide and conquer kind of thing. And I shared with them, when you don't come from a stable family, you don't have mom and dad there to help you get financially established. Like, generally speaking, your parents will leave you resources that it took them their whole lives. It might be a house that's paid off. Yeah. It might be some savings. It might be some investments. But when they pass it on to their children. That gives you a head start on a family that has none of that. Maybe it was blown up by, addiction or violence or abuse or divorce or whatever, but they don't have that. And when you go to a lot of urban areas, there are no established families that are remaining. There is no economic transfer the way that it was meant to be. In fact, the Marxists hate all of that. They hate the family. They want to blow all that up because they realize there is a distinct advantage in Christian households in terms of wealth development. And so at least those kids would have a head start on others that don't have that family support. And so I could see where, it gets to be really, really hard. If you're living in a place like New York City and rent is through the roof, yep. How in the world are you ever supposed to have any extra that you could put towards savings to save up for a down payment on a house?
Cost of living is super expensive.
Yep. So you're trapped. Basically, you feel trapped.
So Mandani, when I heard him speak, I could tell why he was so winsome because he has high conviction. I think he truly, I don't really know, but he sounds like he really believed in this. He's a young man. Yeah.
What somebody said was that they were struck not by his radicalism, but by his open radicalism. Yeah. I mean, most of the folks like Bernie Sanders and AOC, maybe not as much AOC, but the more mature socialists, they know that if they're outspoken in your face about their radicalism, it'll turn most voters off.
Yeah.
But this younger generation is in a Democratic Party, which I just want to say openly, people would say in the past, well, hey, Jesus isn't a Democrat or a Republican. In other words, they were trying to say both parties have their problems and don't try to baptize Jesus. And I get that at some level. But let's just be honest. The old Republican or the old Democratic Party has completely imploded. They don't look anything like your grandma's Democratic Party, right? And what they're pushing now, they've been completely co-opted by the progressives in that party that are all Marxist. And so they're not ashamed about it anymore. They're just out in your face. Let's get rid of police. Like who would have come up with a crazy idea like that 50 years ago? I mean, nobody's going to say that. Even 10 years ago, to have people saying the police are the enemies. ICE agents are the enemies. They're the Nazi Gestapo agents. I mean, this is just craziness. And yet now it is being openly espoused by the Democratic Party. These are the new face of the Democratic Party. And that was one of the things, too, that the columnist pointed out. when you look at this, they're basically saying Mandani represents the zeitgeist of the evolving Democratic base, which is all about open radicalism. So they're not even hiding it. It is the future of the Democratic Party. And I can unashamedly, I know I'll take heat for this, but I can unashamedly say, how in the world can any Christian in any way, shape, or form be identified with the current Democratic Party? This program is about biblical worldview. When you look at biblical worldview and you compare it with the current Democratic Party and what they stand for, show me where there's overlap in terms of what we believe. And again, that's not saying the Republican Party doesn't need reformation, but I mean, we're a two-party system. We have to land somewhere. And to me, there's only one landing place left, and we have to fight to make sure that we can call that a landing place. Right. But I mean, you certainly can't land on the Democratic Party today. I mean, it is unbelievably Marxist.
Yeah, what you're saying is not an opinion; it's a fact. I mean, look at the current Republican Trump administration. Half of it, more than half of it, is there used to be Democrats. Howard Lutnick, he's Interior Secretary or Commerce Secretary, was a fundraiser for Hillary Clinton. Scott Besson used to work with George Soros. RFK ran as a Democrat. So what you're saying is not
all of that's disturbing in and of itself.
But my point is, all the moderate Democrats have been pushed out of their party into the Republican.
You can't be pro-life and be a Democrat.
No, and I'm not saying Republicans are perfect and that they need issues. I'm
right.
just simply describing the situation. Yep. So what you have left in the Democratic Party is what we see today is the No Kings Rally, in which they have, they have signs mocking Charlie Kirk's assassination. They have signs talking about killing Trump. You have open socialists. Yes, you have open socialists, and that's the nature of our United States today. I'm not saying I like it. We're just talking about this is what's happening right now.
But you look at the open radicalism, and some of these things again are laughable. So we talk about government-run grocery stores. What business does the government have in the private sector running grocery stores? I mean, again, this is completely flies in the face of capitalism.
So not only do they have no business doing that, how effective do you think running a grocery store is like? Just hire a guy from the street and just go and do it. Yep. Like to be a profitable, break even.
There's a thin margin in grocery.
It is not easy to run a grocery store. I mean, I don't know. I don't like. There's so many moving parts. So the government's got to go and hire expertise. Who's not going to be paid based on the profitability of the grocery store. They just pay a set salary.
Right, there's no incentive to be excellent at your job because there's no profit that you receive from being, successful.
Right. So thinking through the details of that, it's like okay, someone's not. It's just a good.
No one's
it's
thinking.
An idea.
That's the problem.
Right.
It's ideological, and it's not like this hasn't been tried before. I mean, in every Marxist country, the government was running just about everything, and we see it led to mass starvation, epic failure. It was misery. All it did is magnify the misery. We also have, how about this one? Free city bus rides. It says, "Don't worry, the rich will pay for it." Mm-hmm. And crime will go down. After all, fare evasion isn't a crime if the bus is free. So there's a novel way to solve crime. No one can get arrested for illegally getting on the bus or not paying the fare. We'll just make it free. We'll make the rich pay for it again.
So that's interesting because that perspective is a socialistic, humanistic perspective, which is the reason there's crime, the reason there's dishonesty, the reason why people steal is because of the system, the unequal system. So if you make the system, you start giving out free stuff, then people's nature will become good. Right. That itself is a religious philosophy on human depravity.
Human beings are basically good. It's the evil structures that cause people to behave poorly.
Change the structure.
Right.
And if you fight against the structure, you are part of the bad and should be eliminated.
This goes all the way back to Rousseau, and men are born free and then become enchained by evil societal system. And of course, the evil system is Western civ, and it's rooted in
traditional
Judeo-Christianity,
family, church, capitalism, all that stuff.
Marriage, the patriarchy, all these.
And I'll just say, as a teacher in alt school for 10 years, Lowering the bar does not make kids work harder. Lowering the bar, making it easier for the kids, does not make them work harder. Does not make them more honest. Does not make them more inspired. Does not make them more virtuous. Lowering the bar doesn't do those things.
Right. And you saw that, so here I thought this was always interesting. So here we got this amazing program that's been created to help these kids who are struggling. They have someone like you that is incredibly highly educated. I would say overeducated, there to work with these students. And you still found that because there was really no incentive personally and no motivation that they still didn't take advantage of.
Well, what I found is the virtuous kids, there are many great kids there. There are many great kids who belong to that program. They will achieve whether it's easy or hard.
Right.
But the kids who are lazy and the kids who don't want to work, I can lower the bar all I want.
Right.
And they will lower themselves even more so. Yeah. So at some point, I'm just like, I can't lower the bar anymore. I have to hold a certain standard. If you don't get past it, you don't get past it.
Right.
Whereas the kids who wants it, they want you to raise the bar.
Yeah.
So that virtue doesn't come by. There's only so much system manipulation to inspire virtue.
Right. And this gets back to, the folks on the left all talk about equity. That's the new thing. But a biblical Christian worldview talks about genuine equality. In other words, everybody should play by the same rules. The difference in human nature is that you can't have the same outcomes because people are different, as you just pointed out. You'll find people that generally want to work hard. You'll find those who don't, and you can't program that out of your system. That is just the way people are. So our job is to create an even playing field, whether it's in business or wherever. Same rules, Constitution applies to everybody. But equity says, no, I'm going to take from the successful person and I'm going to give the same amount of money to the person who's done nothing and has no desire to keep it or to invest it or to save it or to use the principles that lead you to be successful.
Well, you make a great point because you can stifle motivation by creating a corrupt system, a system which, if you work hard, you're not incentivized. You can't stifle it. But creating a system is, you can't create a system to inspire those who, well, at least I don't know how. Let me say it that way. But what I've seen again is when you lower the bar, okay, the people who are uninspired, then they're not like, oh man, thank you for giving me something.
Right. So
grateful, whatever.
Yeah.
They say, well, what else can I get for free?
Exactly. And we see that over and over. That's why socialism is an epic failure. There's not one example of where it's been successful. And the problem is if we don't study history, and we stopped teaching that a long time ago too, I think, in our schools, if we don't study history, you end up repeating the same very, very painful mistakes. And, so I guess here's my question. If this guy really has a shot becoming the mayor of New York City, what's the future for the rest of our major urban centers? Chicago pretty much has a leftist now.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
Approval rate of 6%, something like that.
Yeah, just destroying a beautiful city. We've seen it in San Francisco. We see it in L.A. Bass in L.A. I would consider her a Marxist and her policies. So we're seeing this entrenchment, and I think to your point, you're saying, okay, first of all, we've got to change some of the underlying economic realities that are leading to our, especially younger people, being more sympathetic to these terrible, terrible government policies.
Yeah. It's multi-pronged. I think the Trump administration is aware of some of these things. He's been attacking. One of his favorite person to attack is. I'm not saying I even agree with how he attacks it. Is the Federal Reserve. Now we can go and talk about Federal Reserve and what's the purpose and why we even should have a Federal Reserve. Right. But Jerome Powell is like one of the favorite targets of Donald Trump because he's trying to lower that interest rate. Now, there's a lot involved in that. There's a whole financial system, the debt, because we need to pay interest on the debt, all these different things. But I have to think that Trump, in an effort to win 2026, is looking to solve the housing crisis with the young people. And part of it is that 30-year interest loan, which, again, even lowering it 25% or 50% doesn't necessarily shake it right now. We'll see what happens. But I have to guess that is on their mind. Trump hears from young people. These are the things that Charlie Kirk, again, is so powerful because he gives a perspective to Trump of what the young people are thinking.
Right.
And that younger generation who's going to have kids, who's going to be the leader for the next generation, are very concerned about prices, home prices, food prices, cost of living, student loans. So these are things that the Trump administration should, I think they're equipped for it. I'm hopeful because I think they are aware. They're aware of what's going on.
Yeah.
So
I'm concerned at the deeper character level because you can change all these things and, again, give people opportunity. Mm-hmm. But if you don't want to work, if you don't want to save, if you don't want to do the things that are required to set yourself up, then you just want the government to take care of you. And when I look at a lot of these, protests, and you look at who's out there, it's like, what's your job? Who's letting you come out here and dress like a pink bunny and hold your sign up on the street? Who are you working? Are you providing for yourself? Who are these people? And when you have a growing base of people who don't work and are supported by our government and by people who are hard workers, you can provide all the economic incentive you want. There's still no motivation to do any of it. That's where, again, transformation and character and family, and values formation and all these things come in. When we were all singing off the same music sheet years ago, decades ago, we were all promoting the same Judeo-Christian worldview. You saw people thriving. The people that weren't thriving were certainly a minority. But when you lose all of that, and you have, as we talked about last week, public education actively promoting, Marxist and radical ideologies in our school system, now we're fighting against popular culture. Or you see, the corporations that used to be conservative, and now they're pushing, perversion. Or Netflix is now trying to sexualize our kids. And I praise the Lord, I saw a massive drop in their value as people are just voting with their pocketbooks and saying, I'm not going to support all this garbage. So I guess that's the challenge is, we allowed all this invasion of illegals into our country that are bankrupting our inner cities. And it's almost like, again, you got a whole sector of our society that is actually promoting the breakdown of America. They want the system not to work. They're actually working toward breakdown because once everything breaks down, then they can rebuild their Marxist utopian ideas about what the future should look like. So it's terrible when you got Americans who hate America that are actually trying to throw a wrench, in the spokes, so to speak.
Well, so my thoughts on Mandani in New York is, I think he's going to win, and I'm okay with that because I don't want it, but I think the contrast that's going to set up for everyone to see is going to be important. There's a reason why we have 50 states, and there's a reason why we have different cities, and there's a reason why we have federalism.
Thank God for federalism. But even here, and I agree with you, at some point the best teacher is misery and pain and suffering, and you don't want to wish that on anybody. No, it's the price of stupid.
You get what you get, and guess what? Like I've heard of people talking about Democrats who are openly fearful of Mandani winning New York and going to the midterms because midterms we got some contrast to do, and people can see what's going on in New York City.
Well, and I've heard this too. I mean, these again are not like religious conservatives that are talking. They're saying there will be a mass exodus of the whole business sector from New York City. They're just going to gut that city. And who wants to stay there in that kind of craziness? Well, and also the other point we mentioned, in addition to terrible ideas like government-owned grocery stores or government-owned anything, we also talked about free bus rides, which free anything is not free. Someone's paying for it. And then how about this one? We're going to defund the police, but we don't want to say that because this guy has his own security team that's guarding him. So that would be very hypocritical. So now instead of defunding the police, we just do the leftist thing, funding social workers, which I think, again, so you're going to have some nice Karen come up to you when you're a knife-wielding or gun-toting leftist who's just absolute anarchist who's killing people and raping and pillaging and everything, and you're going to send a social worker to solve the problem? I mean, what a joke.
I want to see that in action. I want to see them actually execute it because here's the thing is how many people unless you're going to pay these people a lot of money. How many people want to be that social worker? I mean, it's not a business model. In my mind, it makes no sense. When you write the job description,
what are you going to write? Doesn't make sense. It fails at every turn, and we still keep promoting big government.
But it's going to eventually the fruit is going to come through, and there'll be a huge contrast. Now, the other thing I want to say about what you said about this idea of purpose and virtue and working hard. This is where Charlie Kirk becomes such a powerful icon, because even in his assassination, he embodied somebody who was living for something beyond himself. Now, as a Christian, we can talk about he lived for the gospel. Right. Great, we can all talk about that. But for those who aren't even Christians, he lived for free speech.
I think we would call it the American dream. Like everybody wants to be able to be successful and own a home and
get married, have family,
right.
But be also promote free speech. The First Amendment, which is a biblical principle.
Right.
But again, that's why Charlie Kirk was so compelling, because he fills that void, a demonstration to young people that there is something greater to live for. Even I think in our American culture today, even the churches, a lot of times, we're so comfortable. We're not living that environment in which we're living self-sacrificially.
Right.
And Kirk, even his whole origin story, in which he's sleeping from couch to couch and trying to raise funds and going to, instead of cushy protests, he's going to the lion's den to debate people.
Well, and not to mention getting very little sleep and working like crazy. This was not like this just happened. I mean, he believed in what he was doing, and he built it. He worked hard. And what I'm saying is these are all things that used to be part of that Protestant work ethic. It came out of our Judeo-Christian heritage. And when you lose that, I mean, you got people like, why even bother working? Americans work too hard. We need more vacation time. We need more paid this. We need more pay. I mean, the whole European thing, productivity is what leads to successful economies. If no one's producing anything and all anybody cares about is vacation time, you're not going to be able to enjoy at least the material prosperity.
I think we need more Charlie Kirks. Maybe not him per se. I don't know anyone would be a Charlie Kirk, but we need more people who are living with a purpose and a vision. I don't even mean like necessarily overtly Christian, but with a degree of self-sacrifice. When you are living,
you have to have a transcendent value. There's got to be something more. Like we saw this in the military. Why was military recruiting so terrible? Yeah. Who wants to go give your life or risk your life for a country that you hate? I mean, you have to be fighting for a cause that's transcendent, something bigger than your own life, something more valuable than life itself. And of course, Christianity gives us that transcendent purpose. But when you leave Christianity, what is that purpose, And whatever secondary or third purpose you come up with is certainly going to be less compelling than the purpose that Jesus has given us.
But I just think in our culture today, when you have leaders who can demonstrate that in a very compelling way, not in the fake, like a photoshopped way or AI generated way, but in a self-sacrificial way, people will follow like crazy because there's a vacuum for that. That's why Charlie Kirk was so powerful.
This is why, when you look at this mayor race, why this guy is the leader, because people have seen through the fake Biden leadership. Yeah. People don't want Cuomo back as, in any way, shape, or form. I mean, these are failed Democratic leaders. They're stuffed shirts. They're people that they're not for the people. That's why I think these guys are so compelling. They come across like we're really for the little guy. We're for the people. It's a populist movement, but it's under the lie of Marxism. But to your point, when you see somebody who's willing to sacrifice for what they believe in, it just adds a sense of reality, genuineness, earnestness, that like, okay, for a young person that's living in a purpose vacuum that has no reason to get up and do anything, and then you find someone that's going to come alongside and say, hey man, join the team. It's kind of like a gang, only this is a political gang. Come join our cause. And for a generation that's saying, why am I here? Who am I? We used to start with being created in the image of God. You're created on purpose for a purpose. And when you remove that Judeo-Christian foundation, it's like, well, who am I? Why am I here? And what's the point? I can't even afford my rent. Yeah. Screw this. I need to find some other thing to live for because this isn't working very well. And I think it's just it's a dangerous mixture where the enemy exploits that for his purposes. And at the end of the day, nobody wins; everybody loses. But that's where this race is at. So we'll continue to keep our eyes on that and pray that we have a Winsome Sears kind of turnaround like we're seeing in the.
Well, who are you cheering for in the New York race, though?
Well, that's yeah.
You're going to cheer for Andrew Cuomo?
Well, for us, we're looking at a lesser of two evils. I mean, Cuomo certainly was terrible, but who could be more terrible than this guy?
No.
This guy's dangerous because this guy actually has a plan. This guy actually knows where he wants this thing to go.
My thought is, when I don't know, I should say this. I won't say it anyway. I don't care. When Jesus says, Judas says, whatever you're going to do, just do it. Just get it done with. That's my thought to this.
Yeah. Well, no.
Whatever you're going to do, Mandani, just do it, man.
Yeah,
show the people what you're all about.
Yeah, because reality is going to hit, what's that verse about wisdom is seen in its children? In other words, sometimes ideas always have consequences, but sometimes it takes a little while for those ideas, the full consequence of those ideas to play out. And I like the phrase, the proof's in the pudding. You're going to eat the pudding, and eventually, what's it taste like? Is it going to be bitter, nasty, sour, or is it going to taste really good? And I think in this situation, to your point, do what you're going to do, and let's see how this thing plays out in real life. And I hope we have a massive wake-up call. A couple of other things I just wanted to hit on real quick. This was very, very interesting and very concerning. I liked your take on it. This was from Dan Gaynor, an editorial he wrote called "The England We Love Is Lost, and if we don't change, America will be too." He quoted some incredibly disturbing stats in here. I don't think I highlighted them. Let's see if I can find them. This one right here. Already 12,000 people have been arrested each year in Britain for what they say online. So if you wrap yourself in the flag of England and you walk on the streets, you could be arrested because waving the flag is seen as offensive to immigrants. So we're not talking about assimilation. We're talking about just being proud to be a Brit. To be proud to be a Brit will get you fined or imprisoned today, which is unbelievable in my brain. But that's where the culture is at. And he's just talking about the violence is breaking out. It's interesting with as soon as President Trump went in and brokered the peace deal between the Hamas and Israel. What did the Hamas, terrorists do? They gathered together a bunch of their folks that they're supposed to be fighting for, and slaughtered them, executed them. There was no public protest about Hamas's behavior. They just rounded up a bunch of people for no reason other than whatever reason they thought they needed to round them up, and just slaughtered them. No outrage, none of that. And so this is the kind of behavior we're seeing in terms of the full embrace of Islam in Great Britain. And his take is, usually what happens over the pond is about 10 years.
Disagree, yeah.
About 10 years ahead of what happens in America. So what do you maybe we end here. What do you see?
That used to be the motif of like, hey, this is where it's coming down to America. What's going on Australia? You guys better be careful in America. No, right. I don't buy any of that. That pessimistic attitude is not what gets us where we're at.
What do you think's different? Because we're seeing it all around us, okay? We're seeing it to the north. We're seeing it in Mexico. We're seeing it in Canada. We're seeing it in Great Britain.
But let's look at Poland. Let's look at Italy. Let's look at Hungary. These are other nations that's resurrecting. I think there was another, Trump was, let's look at Malay in Argentina, El Salvador. The populist movement in which people are saying this elite globalism thing is breaking up. That is the move that's happening right now. Other pockets, Britain they're sowing, what is it? They're reaping what they sow right now.
Yep.
But there's a whole trend.
Let me ask you this, I guess this is a loaded question because I'm not a pessimist either. Yeah. But in our lifetime, does Britain ever come back from what?
That I don't know, but
certainly it's possible.
It's possible. There's a million man march after Charlie Kirk was assassinated to protest. I think Tommy Robinson organized that. There are still patriots in Britain, but what's happening in Britain to me is a reckoning, but it was also helping us understand why the First Amendment was such a powerful thing, because they don't have a First Amendment in England. We got to understand, in a lot of these nations, there is no Bill of Rights.
Right.
So America is by nature a very, very different organization.
Yeah, England inspired our Bill of Rights.
Yeah, England inspired, but we took it to the next level because we didn't want kings, right? So going back to no kings protest. But the whole idea is I will bet on America right now. We are trending up and to the right on so many different levels, on so many different things, and we're saying, hey, this movement for the people, for America first. I think a lot of nations are seeing us as leaders, and they're recognizing how powerful it is. So I don't have that pessimism. I'm not saying there's not ups and downs,
or things that we should be concerned about. I mean,
there
certainly
are always
have to be
going to be
aware.
battles, but I just that pessimistic, like America, you better watch out, whatever. That's a lot of times people have used fear and to promote their views and their hits and clickbaits and stuff like that. So this is my thought. I think to inspire people to action, fear is a temporary movement to get people going for a little bit.
Yep.
But hope and joy and optimism is much better at motivating people in the long term.
I agree.
So guess what? Stop using the fear, the anger, the whatever is going to come. The world's going to no. The kingdom of God is ever growing. The prophecy of Daniel says, at the end times there will be a kingdom that's ever growing. It's going to be better and better and better. And I'm tired of people dooming and glooming. And the younger generation are not inspired by that. They're unimpressed by that. They want to know that things are going to get better. I mean,
they want to have hope.
Donald Trump's 80 years old. He's 79, 80 or whatever it is. And he's a guy who's been shot at, whatever. And at one point he says, you know what? We can change the trajectory of America. I don't agree with everything he says, but that optimism and that will he has to say we can build peace, we can make things better. I mean, if an 80-year-old can do that, I think the younger people can do that too.
That's good. Hope is the non-negotiable, for leadership. You can't inspire people while you're on a sinking ship.
No.
And I think what we saw in that last election was so eye-opening. I've used this, from the pulpit before, but this whole doom, gloom, everything's going to get worse. I mean, we were on the cliff of doom and gloom, like we were gazing at Mordor in the distance, and we saw a rapid reversal in a short amount of time. And what appeared to be this growing darkness was falsely propped up by the propagandist media and some of the people with the biggest megaphones. But what we saw was, wait a minute, there's still a lot of us who share the same values, who love America, who love Christ. There's more of us than we thought.
Well, I'm not saying there's no price to be paid. Charlie Kirk was assassinated.
Yeah.
People were in prison, jail for all of their silence. Their accounts were lost. People got debanked. There's price. But again, just focusing on all those things doesn't see the big picture, which is God's doing something. God's moving in a powerful way. He's using people that I would never think he would use, but who am I? And we just want to be part of that. And we invite everyone around us to join this, and not just the movement of Living Stones Church, but the movement of God in our nations today.
Yeah. And revival is the key. We have to change people's hearts, and then we have to disciple their minds, which is why, the Great Commission is so important. Don't just get people to make a commitment to Jesus. Teach them all things, including an understanding of freedom and liberty and representative government and all these things that have led to just capitalism, that have led to untold blessing in America. That is our hope. Yeah. So I'm with you on that. But boy, I tell you what, when you start seeing the movement around us in America getting encircled, with some of these crazy Marxist, leftist, globalist stuff, it is a time to go back to Charlie Kirk's comments. We have got to seize this moment more than ever. The next 3 or 4 years, we've got to be more bold than ever, and we've got to recover a lot of lost ground. Yeah. And we have to have a long-term perspective. I do hope the Lord comes, next week. But if he doesn't, we better have a long-term perspective, because we need to occupy until he comes. So thank you guys for watching the podcast today. It's always a treat to be with you. And, Andrew, just even last Sunday, it was great. Some people come up and say, hey, really love the podcast. We watch you guys listen to you every week. And So anyway, I just really just want to say on a personal note, thanks for letting us know about the feedback. Our desire in 2026 is to have greater exposure and, build a platform broader and wider than we ever have before. So pray for Andrew because he's responsible to make that happen. All right. No, it's actually Matthew, our producer, who's responsible for that.
It's going to be you next.
Anyway, so we need to go into prayer and fasting quickly, all right? No, just kidding. We'll see you guys next Thursday.